Hey folks, James Abrenio coming to you from Abrenio Law, your Northern Virginia personal injury and criminal defense law firm. In this video, let's talk about litigation costs when it comes to personal injury cases, when it comes to car accident cases or medical malpractice cases or any other type of injury cases. What are litigation costs? Why do they matter? Why do you need to be paying attention? And hopefully this video is going to shed a little bit of light. So first of all, what are litigation costs? Litigation costs, at least this is not a scientific term, but it's really something that's a term of art that's used in the business, and it really encapsulates costs in pursuing your case after you're filing a lawsuit. So typically, litigation costs will be include filing fees, which is usually a couple $100 in order to file your lawsuit. Deposition costs. So let's say you need to depose the defendant or other witnesses. These are costs to hire a court reporter and a videographer. And if you're using online Zoom type deposition, a video tech, in order to capture evidence in the way of spoken testimony. So you're deposing individual people, and then you've got them in written format, you got them on video. And so you've got that as part of the record of the case. Now, typically speaking, when it comes to deposition costs, these can be in the thousands of dollars. So depending on the amount of depositions you need, usually it's at least $1,500 for a very basic deposition for a very simple witness. But I've had many cases where deposition cost gets into the multiple thousands of dollars. If you've got more complex cases, let's say you've got a products liability, they can be tens of thousands of dollars. So it really depends on the complexity of your case, but you have to understand that there's going to be at least thousands of dollars involved in this. Now, what other litigation costs are there? There are other things like hiring, uh, exhibit makers and creating binders and things like that are involved in the actual functional litigation and case presentation. But probably the biggest case litigation cost that you also need to be aware of is expert witness fees. So let's say you're involved in a car accident and you have a broken shoulder. Well, you need an expert doctor if you're going to try your case to come in to testify to a reasonable degree of medical probability about what your injuries are, that they're related to the case, that the treatment you got is related and caused by the accident, and that they're reasonable and necessary, and the costs involved are reasonable and necessary. In order to do that, unfortunately, if you're filing a case in circuit court, in the higher trial court, if you've got a complex injury case, you're not going to want to be in a position where you don't have a doctor to come in and testify about the injuries, because you can actually get a lot of damages struck. A defense attorney may be able to essentially prevent you from testifying about it individually because you're not an expert. But also, they're going to hire their own doctors to contest whatever you're claiming happened. And I can just tell you, no matter what kind of injury case you have, they're typically going to hire their own doctor to come in and testify to the opposite, or the injury is not as bad as you say it is. It's caused by a pre-existing condition, or the treatment was overly complicated and too expensive. They're going to hire their own expert witness or witnesses to come in to testify about that. So you're going to need an expert doctor or doctors, depending on the complexity of your injuries, to come in and tell the jury what they need to hear. And also, from a case presentation standpoint, having doctors come in and explaining what you're going through or went through helps highlight the complexity of what you went through. And I think it adds to the overall value of the case, even everything equal, even if you could testify about your own injuries. Now, what are the litigation costs when it comes to expert witnesses? It really depends on the doctor or doctors. I could tell you're spending at least $5,000, but it can easily get into tens of thousands of dollars when it comes to complex injury cases. Also, depending on how you're going to present your witness, if you're going to do it by video deposition, that again can add thousands of dollars in order to get them properly videoed and presented to the court. Or if you're going to bring your witness in person, they usually cost a lot more to come in person because they're going to be sitting at court. They got to drive to court. They got to take an entire day off for testimony. It's during business hours. Whereas if you're going to present your witness by video deposition, you usually can get them after hours. So it's cheaper, but then you've got to pay for court reporters and videographers. So again, this can be anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 to 15 to 20. It can be more depending on the complexity of your injuries and how many doctors you need. So you need to be keeping that in mind. Now, why does it matter? Why do litigation costs matter in a personal injury case? Well, at least typically speaking, most personal injury attorneys will work on what we call a contingency fee. So you're not going to pay an attorney a flat fee, let's say $5,000 or $10,000 for a complex injury case, and then that's done. You're not typically going to pay them hourly. Is there exceptions, and can some attorneys agree to that? Sure, but typically we will take a percentage of what you get on the back end. So you'll get a settlement check or a verdict check at the end of the case, and then we'll take a percentage of that. So that can be, typically the industry standards a third. But the other thing is what ends up happening is a lot of times the personal injury attorney will be fronting litigation costs as you're pursuing your case. You're not seeing checks go out the door out of your own personal pocket, but those will then be reimbursed at the end of the case. So let's say you get a settlement check for $100,000, and let's say the attorney's fee is a third, so $33,000, but then your litigation costs are 20 grand. Well, all of a sudden now, where you think you're getting $100,000, it gets down to $66,000 because 33,000 is going to the attorney, and all of a sudden now you're just paying $20,000 to reimburse for litigation costs. Now you're only seeing $40,000 or $45,000, and that changes the aspect of what the value of the case is worth to you personally. What is net into your pocket? Now, why does that matter? Well, think about it this way, and I always tell people when I'm pursuing a case, do the math. Let's say that $100,000 verdict, let's say an offer came down the pike 6 months before trial of $75,000. And let's say now the attorney doesn't have to spend the $20,000 on litigation costs. Well, when you do the math, you may end up with more money in your pocket if you're settling for $75,000 versus going to trial and actually winning $100,000. The other thing is you may go to trial and you're not guaranteed the $100,000. So even if the numbers make a little more sense, there's also value of having a certain number before going to trial versus the uncertainty of going to trial and possibly losing or getting less money. So whenever you're thinking about your personal injury case, and let's say you've got an attorney who's presenting you with a settlement offer from an insurance company, and you're wondering, should I settle this case? I think it's worth $100,000, but they're offering 60 or 70 or 75. You need to be thinking about litigation costs and how much at the end of the day will be in the net in your pocket. Because while it sounds better to have an insurance company have to pay a lot more money, in my view, personally, I would rather a client get less overall dollars from the insurance company if that means that they get more money in their pocket. Now, every case is going to be different. Offers are going to be different. Strengths of trial facts are going to be different. Whether or not an expert witness is actually cooperating versus are they going to blow you off and you're going to have to spend money and then they may still not come. Those are all factors that you need to be thinking about when you're considering a settlement offer. But hopefully your attorney, if you're working with an attorney, they're talking to you about litigation costs. That way it's not coming up on the back end. But if you're watching this video, let's say you're my client. Hopefully you're watching this and we've had this discussion, but it's something you need to be thinking about if you got a personal injury case, because at the end of the day, raw dollars coming in from insurance company isn't what matters in my view. It matters what goes in your pocket. So hopefully this answered a few questions for you, may have raised a few. Feel free to check out our website, www.Abrenio Law, where we've shot a lot of videos and written a lot of articles about personal injury law. You can also give us a call at phone number 703-570-4180. Thanks a lot. Look forward to talking to you. Until then, be safe.